Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Zirin and her teddy bear Bearchette, who says hello. We're here with another story for you today, but before we get to our story, we want to say a super special hello to Madison and Mason, who sent us a message this week, and we also want to say a super special hello to Naraya, who sent us a really cool video this week. So we love to hear from everybody, so please keep sending us messages because it makes us so happy when we hear from our friends. I also want to say a super special thank you to my mom, who was cleaning up some boxes that she found in the attic at her house this weekend, and she actually found some of my books from when I was a kid, and she actually found some more of our Mr. Men and Little Miss books. So today I'm going to read one of the books that she found this weekend. This book is so old, it's about from when I was in kindergarten, so it's a really old book today. This one is another story by Roger Hargreaves. This one is called Mr. Messy. Hope you like it. You ready, Bearchette? Okay, we're ready. Are you ready at home? Okay, here we go. Mr. Messy was the messiest person you've ever met in your whole life. He lived in a particularly messy looking house. The paint was peeling, the windows were broken, the garden gate was off its hinges. And had Mr. Messy cut the grass in his garden lately? He had not. Oh dear. One morning, Mr. Messy woke up in his messy bed, yawned, scratched, got up, brushed his teeth, leaving the top off the toothpaste, had his breakfast, spilling cornflakes all over the floor, and then he set out for a walk, tripping over a broom that he left in the garden 2 weeks before. Mr. Messy was walking through the woods behind his house. He walked and walked right through the woods until he came to the other side. And do you know what he found? Mr. Messy found the neatest looking little cottage that he's ever seen. There was a man in the garden clipping the hedge. He looked up at Mr. Messy as he approached. "Good morning. I'm Mr. Messy," said Mr. Messy. "I can see that," replied the man, looking up at him. "I'm Mr. Tidy." "And I'm Mr. Neat," said another man. "Tidy and neat," said Mr. Tidy. "Neat and tidy," said Mr. Neat. "We're in business together," exclaimed Mr. Tidy. "The people who own this house have asked us to do some work for them." "What sort of work?" asked Mr. Messy. "Oh, we make things nice and neat," said Mr. Neat. "Perhaps we could come along and do some work for you," said Mr. Tidy, looking at Mr. Messy. "But I don't want things neat and tidy," said Mr. Messy. "Nonsense," said Mr. Tidy. "Fiddlesticks," said Mr. Neat. "But," said Mr. Messy. "Come along," said Mr. Neat. "Off we go," said Mr. Tidy. But, said Mr. Messy. "But nothing," said Mr. Neat, and off they all went to Mr. Messy's house at the other side of the woods. "Good heavens," said Mr. Neat when he saw where Mr. Messy lived. "Good gracious me," added Mr. Tidy. "This is the messiest house I have ever seen in all my born days," they both said at the same time. "We better do something about it," said Mr. Neat. Before Mr. Messy could open his mouth, the two of them were rushing about Mr. Messy's house. Mr. Neat hoed and mowed and pruned and snipped and clipped and dug and made the garden look neater than it had ever looked before. Mr. Tidy cleaned and primed and rubbed and painted and mended and made the outside of Mr. Messy's house look tidier than it had ever looked before. Then they both went inside the house. Good heavens, said Mr. Neat. Good gracious, said Mr. Tidy. And they set about cleaning the house from top to bottom. They brushed and swept and polished and scrubbed and made the inside of the house look neater and tidier than it had ever looked before. There we are, said Mr. Tidy. All finished, said Mr. Neat. Tidy and neat, said Mr. Tidy. Neat and tidy, said Mr. Neat. Mr. Messy just didn't know what to say. Then they both looked at Mr. Messy. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Mr. Neat said to Mr. Tidy. Precisely, said Mr. Tidy. What we're both thinking, they said together to Mr. Messy, is that you look much too messy to live in a neat and tidy house like this. But, said Mr. Messy, but whatever Mr. Messy said was of no use, and Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy whisked him off to the bathroom upstairs. Then Mr. Neat got hold of one of Mr. Messy's arms, and Mr. Tidy got hold of the other arm, and they picked him up and put him right into the bathtub. Mr. Messy wasn't used to taking baths. Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy washed and brushed and cleaned and scrubbed and combed Mr. Messy until he didn't look like Mr. Messy at all. In fact, he looked the opposite of messy. He looked at himself in the mirror. You know what I'm going to have to do now, he said in a rather fierce voice. Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy looked worried. What are you going to have to do? They asked Mr. Messy. I'm going to have to change my name, he said. And then they all laughed together and became the best of friends. And that really is the end of the story, except to say that if you're a messy sort of person, you might have a visit from two people. And you know what they're called, don't you? The end. Well, we hope you liked the story of Mr. Messy. We'll be back later this week with some more stories for you. So make sure you send us a message, let us know what you thought about the story, and please keep sending us pictures of what you're doing with Flat Mrs. Zirin. We'd love to see what you're up to. So we'll say goodbye for now. So bye. Bye.